Hi, I'm Lydia Earhart, Director of Marketing at Mount San Antonio Gardens. Welcome to In the Gardens, a show very specific to our YouTube channel where you get to meet the wonderful residents that reside at the gardens. So thank you for joining us today, Sam.
Well,
Is
my
it okay?
pleasure. Yeah.
Is it okay
Yeah,
if
of
I call you
course. Of
Sam?
course.
Do your friends call you Sam?
Friends call me Sam.
Okay. Does your wife call you Sam?
She does. She does. Or other things.
Good. Good. And you've been at the gardens how long?
I've been here since July 31st, 2019.
Oh, wow. It's amazing that you remember the day too.
Oh, memorable day.
Yeah, it's a life change, right?
It is. It's a huge life change.
So tell me a little bit about how you came to the gardens and how you decided that it was time to make a life change.
Well, I think I first visited the gardens in the 1980s. And before I moved in, I gave 4 lectures.
Oh.
And the first time I lectured here, they said, oh, by the way, there's a Nobel Prize winner in the audience. I thought, well, that's very cool. I've never lectured to a Nobel Prize winner before.
And they were a resident?
They were residents, a resident. And so over the years, I gave 3 other lectures. And then, of course, close friends moved in. We were very close to Herb and Dorothy Smith. Herb had taught Asian history at Pomona College. And in many ways, I'm Herb's replacement. So we knew it well, and we visited often, and even brought dinner over for the Smiths on special occasions. So we had a good sense of what the gardens was, what its mission was, what it provided. And we lived on 8th Street, 3/4 of a mile, half a mile away. So we often drove by the gardens. So yeah, we had a good sense of what we were getting into.
A lot of people think that moving into the gardens, you kind of give up so much. Have you felt that way, that you've given up so much of your independence, or do you feel the opposite?
Well, I continued to teach full-time at Pomona until, I think, 2021. And so it was life as usual, but I'm simply living in a new place. And then I went on half-time, which meant that I only taught in the fall, and I was off from January through August. And it was great. It was great. I didn't have to worry about the yard or the pool. And I was able to be extremely productive. I finished 3 book manuscripts in 5 years, thanks to that period from January through August for 5 years.
And did you feel like it was important for you to plan ahead for future healthcare?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Events? Yeah.
And there have been a series of medical emergencies. I was on a research trip to Japan in January 2020 when my wife began to have a serious medical issue. And she called the clinic, and they immediately said, you need to go to emergency right away. So they took good care of her. It took me a day and a half to get home, but I never worried that she was in any danger. If she had been at home, it would have been a major problem.
And you've written so many books too. And can you tell us a little bit about the subject matter of those books, and then also the current book that you're working on, or you have been working on?
Okay. Well, I began in a very, very esoteric field. I was a Confucian specialist, studying Confucian philosophers in early modern Japan. And then in the 90s, I began to search for the diaries of ordinary Japanese during the war, because the prevailing American view, which I had heard and subscribed to, I suspect, was that all Japanese were fanatics during the war. And I thought, is that really true? So I searched for the diaries and letters of ordinary Japanese in Japan during the war, collected about 200 diaries and about 50 memoirs, and I started reading them. And I discovered that reality was more complex, that people were not happy with what was going on during the war. Young men and children were the most eager to fight. They might be described as fanatical. But women were the most sensible, and women recognized the signs of defeat as early as 1943 and used the word defeat in their diaries. So the picture that emerged was quite different from the American propaganda that was being spread at the time and that survived to the present. So I translated 8 of those diaries in 2005 and then wrote a book based on about 100 of them, published in 2015. Then in 2009, my editor at the University of Hawaii Press asked me, after we had a nice lunch in Waikiki, if I'd be interested in writing a history of Japanese food. And I was 62 at the time, and of course I thought, well, of course. But I didn't say that because I knew that I'd have to figure out how to do it, what kinds of sources I would use, how I would organize the history of Japanese food, what kind of narratives I would write. So after half a year, I emailed her and said, sure, I'd love to do this, but you and I know that you'll be long retired by the time I finish. And she retired 6 or 7 years later, and I probably won't finish until 2030.
Wow.
But that got me into food, and I was having to visit a widowed father in Hawaii 3 or 4 times a year. So I started interviewing chefs involved with the regional cuisine movement. Like we had California cuisine, we had the New American cuisine, the New Southwestern cuisine, and there was a Hawaiian regional cuisine. So I ended up interviewing about 3 dozen people over the course of many trips a year. And I published the first study of Hawaii regional cuisine in 2019. And then I continued to work on my history of Japanese food. And then I came across the memoir written by a famous Kaiseki chef. And Kaiseki is a genre of Japanese cuisine that probably is the most refined cuisine in the world. It dates from the 1500s. And I'm so intrigued by this man's memoir that I thought maybe I'll translate it. And then I thought, no, I think maybe I'll gather representative pieces by Kaiseki chefs and publish an anthology. And so I did that. And it's now in the process of being published. It's called Chefs Don't Talk and Other Kaiseki Writings. It'll be the first anthology of its kind, only the 5th book on Kaiseki cuisine.
Can you define that cuisine?
Well, it's a cuisine that emerged out of the tea ceremony, and it's a cuisine that values fresh seasonal ingredients gathered at their peak, and the cuisine doesn't use sauces or does anything that masks the inherent flavors of the ingredients. And so French chefs started visiting Japan in the 1970s and 80s, French chefs associated with what was called the Nouvelle Cuisine, and they were immediately taken with Kaiseki because Kaiseki chefs had been doing for centuries what the Nouvelle Cuisine chefs had begun to do in the 1970s and 1980s. The other characteristics are they're usually a Kaiseki meal is usually 8 to 12 courses. Each course is quite small, and each is served on beautiful plateware and prepared in the most refined, careful ways. It's probably the most refined, exquisite cuisine in existence at the moment. And it's also not accessible to everyone. Kaiseki dinners run several $100s. And so traditionally it was members of the aristocracy, politicians, fantastically wealthy, and food writers like me who go to these restaurants.
Do you often lecture here, or have you
I have
continued your
lectured. Well,
lectures?
I gave 4 lectures before I moved in. I think I've given 1 or 2 since I moved in, and I'll be giving another in June on the book that I'm about to start revising, which is on hyper-local cuisines along the Pacific Rim. It's a very interesting thing has happened in fine dining in the global cities along the Pacific Rim. Chefs, French-trained chefs, have begun to turn away from their French training, and they've either rediscovered their own native cuisines, or they've begun to experiment with local products, local ingredients, local condiments, local culinary techniques.
Wonderful. Well, we can't wait to hear more about your book, and you said you are going to lecture about
I
it
am.
at the
I'm giving a
gardens.
lecture in May that probably will be called "The Old and New Hyperlocal Cuisines Along the Pacific Rim," and I'll probably mention five different restaurants.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, I know there's so much more for us to talk about.
No, actually, you've exhausted
But
my store of stories. So,
but I wanted to know, is there something else that you wanted to shed light on about the gardens that you find it is important for prospects to know?
well, I think what I find most interesting is that your intellectual life continues and is enriched by being here. I know that there are a number of book clubs. There's a series that my friend John, who taught at Cal Poly, teaches, and it's called, I don't know, Great Powers in History or something like that. And after I fully retire on June 30th, I hope to start a Asian history reading club that will probably focus on China, because China is the great story of the moment and will be for the next several decades. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much
Well,
for
not at
agreeing
all.
to do
Thank you.
this. And
Thank you.